Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Always Almost There, Day After Show Live. My name is Ryan. I'm here today with two awesome guests, Jeff and Josh. Hello, how are you guys?
Hey, Ryan.
Doing great.
Hey, Thank you both for being here today. We are going to talk about Goose's set at Railbird Festival yesterday on June 4th. Of course, there was no stream and there have been no audio releases, so we just have firsthand accounts from you two guys here. Obviously, we have the set list. Thank you, Jeff, for texting it in yesterday while they were playing, so we could have, so we could know what was going on, if you will. So let take me through, Jeff. You go first. Take me through the festival yesterday. What the vibes were like leading up to Goose's set.
Yeah, sure. So I'll actually start with day prior. We showed up. It was a festival on a gigantic horse racing track, now defunct, in Lexington, Kentucky. But horse racing is serious business in Kentucky, so you can imagine the size and scale of this, massive horse racing track. Just enormous. This festival, I think they had something like 40,000 people there. Tickets all sold out during the pre-sale within an hour. So wow, tickets were gone within an hour of going on sale during the pre-sale. 40,000 tickets for a 2-day festival. The place was huge, but it was a very, very well-run festival. Disclaimer: I don't like festivals. I especially don't like jam band festivals. When I do go to festivals, I prefer them to be like a more eclectic mix of acts rather than just, kind of like same thing all day. And I don't like camping festivals. And this was not a camping festival, which was great. But it was extremely well run. I'll let Josh speak a little bit more to this, but, because he was mentioning it earlier, but this was, probably the best run festival I've ever been to, with over 30,000 people at it, just in terms of the proper amount of amenities, everything remaining clean, enough shade for everybody in the heat, and just like a really great lineup too. But yeah, I mean, really, really well done festival. I don't like festivals, but my wife and I are already talking about wanting to go back next year, no matter who's there, just because we trust it'll be well curated.
Amazing. Thank you. Josh, what about you? Your experience before Goose played yesterday?
Yeah, I thought it was great. Same as Jeff, just really well run. Never had to wait for water, never had to wait for bathrooms. It was, a 95-degree day in June in Kentucky. So, there was a need for lots of hydration. But I think yesterday was really the day that my wife and I kind of were really locked in on, going from set to set, because there were a few of our kind of favorite acts were all on that same day. Amos Lee, The Head and the Heart, Goose, Nathaniel Rateliff. I wasn't as familiar really with the headliners, Tyler Childers and Zach Bryan, but it kind of, in listening to the playlists, leading up to the festival, started to, take a liking to their music. But clearly the audience was very much there for those two. But yesterday I did see quite a few other Goose shirts, and I felt like it was a easy, hey, there's another person who's there like me to see, kind of the one sort of jam act on the lineup. But I wondered how they would be received at a more of a country kind of folk Americana type lineup.
Awesome. Well, getting to the set, what was the turnout like for Goose? Were they on the main stage?
They were on the second stage. So the second stage and the main stage were right across the field from one another, and they kind of had alternating set times. So as soon as one stage finished, the other would kick off.
Nice.
So Goose was on the second main stage, and they had Nickel Creek on before them, and then they had The Head and the Heart on after them. And Goose actually seemed better attended than either of those. The Head and the Heart had a pretty good crowd, but by Head and the Heart, it felt like, almost everybody at the festival was already trying to post up and get a good spot for Tyler Childers, who is incredible. But people were clearly there for Tyler, so a lot of people missed the Head and the Heart set. Nickel Creek did really well, but there was a third stage that had something really popular happening during it also. Goose had a pretty good crowd. I mean, I can't really judge people, but maybe 10,000 or so people were like in
That's
range,
awesome.
paying
Right.
You know, somewhere between 5 and 10. It's hard to say.
No, that's a great turnout for sure. Josh, what was your perspective, and where did you end up for Goose?
I was kind of so we caught Nickel Creek over there, who was great. Which, by the way, I saw Rick and Peter kind of like side stage enjoying that, and then also later on back by the soundboard and lighting and stuff. But they seem to be loving it, and it's always funny at we went to Newport last year and we unfortunately missed their set, but they stuck around like for those couple of other days, and they're just like so locked in on seeing other bands and really enjoying the music, which is fun to see. So anyway, we saw Nickel Creek. We went to Amos Lee when we jetted back over for Goose, and I was kind of on like the Trevor side, not too far back. I thought it was a great view and vantage point. I was actually really glad they were on that stage because it meant that people that were there to see them, and they weren't just like parked out for Tyler Childers. And that's no slight against Tyler Childers, but like I knew that based on the previous day's experience, that main stage kind of led to more people like parking out for the headliner.
Yeah.
Which I think can detract from the other act a little bit.
Yeah. No, that's a great point to make. Yeah, definitely at a festival, like at ACL last October, I saw a band, the Marias, that I only saw because I was getting a good spot for Goose. I wouldn't have probably seen them otherwise. And so, yeah, that's awesome that Goose had that great turnout at this festival without being on the main stage and getting those people that are like, camping out all day to get on the rail for Tyler Childers. Jeff, we didn't mention, where did you end up for Goose's set? Where were you standing?
For the start of it, I was kind of just in front of the soundboard, which wasn't too far back from the stage here, just in front and to the left of the soundboard. And then kind of by the end of their set, I had moved up to maybe 20 people back from the stage, kind of right in front of Trevor.
Nice. All right. Well, let's talk about the music a little bit. I know, I assume, sorry, not having heard anything, but based on the set list on paper, not a whole lot musically to dive into, but the song selection looks great. Let's talk about the first few songs: Animal, Flow Down, Silver Rising, Blood Buzz, Ohio. What was the crowd like throughout these songs? Was there anything that stuck out to you? Josh, kick us off here.
I mean, I thought Animal was a great choice for being, at a racetrack. Horses were kind of a theme of the weekend. I thought that song was, pretty well received. I think I thought it was a really solid festival set overall. Like I thought that Flow Down kind of after that made a lot of sense because it's got a little bit of like a, I don't know, country kind of twang to it a little bit, I guess. But those are, I guess, my takeaways. I knew they would play a cover at some point. I kind of think Blood Buzz Ohio maybe was proximity to Ohio, and that's obviously a great song and a great cover that they do. I felt like for that audience, maybe like a little bit more well-known cover would have been fun. The Way It Is, or like something that maybe some of the more fans that weren't as familiar with Goose or maybe more of the indie genre would have enjoyed. But I mean, all the songs were just played so well, and those are my takeaways from kind of the early portion of the set. I don't know.
Awesome. Jeff, what did you think of the first half of the set?
I mean, it was festival Goose, kind of like what you would expect to see in this environment where, they're playing to an audience that's probably, 90% of the people seeing them plus had never seen them before. And of the people who were there, most of them who had heard anything had probably heard Hunger Site and maybe Dripfield on the radio. So
right.
That's what they were there to see and hear. The crowd itself was a country music crowd, but more of, like a left of mainstream, cool alt country crowd. It's gotten very popular lately, but we're not talking about like a Travis Tritt, Brooks and Dunn crowd right here. We're it wasn't Toby Keith. It's Tyler Childers and Zach Bryan. Like it's a different sort of country. And then also this festival had a lot of just cool like rootsy indie rock stuff going on with it too. So I thought that the song choices were good. I mean, Animal is just a banger. And they played a long intro on it. They really, I was looking around and watching, all of these, like Goose Curious, Not Yet Sold people kind of like wide-eyed during Peter's Thins, just like, what the heck is going on?
Nice.
But, then there was a lot of head bobbing and some dancing going on during Animal. They started up Flow Down, and I mean, for those playing Fantasy Goose, if there was any song that was going to be repeated twice on this 3 Southern Festival weekend, it was going to be Flow Down. So
Did you play?
I'm an idiot.
You play
I
Flow
should have
Down
picked
last
it for
night?
yesterday.
I was gonna say I didn't either.
I
But
did
in
not.
hindsight, it's an obvious pick.
Yeah, I played it Friday, but I didn't play it yesterday.
Yeah.
But I did play the Whales, knowing it was a country music festival of sorts. I was hoping they would play the Whales because I think that's a really good country song, and it's on their new album too. And so I thought that was the pick for it. Goose disagreed. They played Flow Down. But it wasn't like a yeehaw country crowd. It was more of like a cool indie country crowd. So for me, I think the Whales would have worked. But seeing the songs that they chose to do next, maybe Flow Down was more appropriate because they kind of slowed it down a little bit afterwards. With Silver Rising and Blood Buzz. So, I think having Whales in there, that they needed a little bit more of a rising sound. So Flow Down was the right call considering the rest of the set. I'm actually going to disagree with Josh on Blood Buzz and say I thought that was a great cover choice for this festival, just because it did have that kind of cool indie vibe to it. I mean, you had the Head and the Heart playing there. You had, Nathaniel Holdery, and then Nathaniel Rateliff and Amos Lee and Jenny Lewis, like Neil Francis, Lucius. A lot of these just like really cool indie bands. So I think playing Blood Buzz at this was kind of like when they did Blood Buzz. Each night they played at Austin City Limits. Like that they played 2. Oh no, I think they only did Blood Buzz.
They did Blood Buzz the first week of ACL, which I was surprised about, but it makes sense. In a festival setting, especially with a more indie audience, to play like the National, and people might know it.
Yeah,
I think it's fit for sure.
I understand that it's a great song. I love their cover of it. I was just like thinking, just like one of their very like mainstream covers would have gone over well too. Mm-hmm. Like they haven't played "Moving Out" in a while, and I think that's a really fun cover.
Yeah, I feel like "Moving Out" would have been an interesting pick for this set. I think Blood Buzz really works. Just again, only on paper, not having heard a note, but after in between Silver Rising and Hunger Sight, I feel like Blood Buzz is great because you have it between these two great examples of Goose's songwriting, and you're like, so Silver Rising, which is amazing, has that kind of indie vibe to it, and then you get Blood Buzz, which is like more people might know at a cover, and then Hunger Sight, which is great, and a little bit of improv happening in this Hunger Sight. I know you reported in a Clav tweet during this jam, Jeff.
So there was, the nice thing with this Hunger Sight is, after playing a few songs and just letting everybody kind of get the feel of them, Hunger Sight has just become this certified banger where, it's like, they can't miss with it. Like every time they played it in 2023, they've knocked it out of the park. And this isn't the best Hunger Sight of the year, but it was the most impressive improv of the night for this festival set. And and when you think about all the people in the crowd that were there that were only familiar with Hunger Sight, they finally get that song that they're familiar with and want to hear, and then they get baptized with fire as just the fiery jams rain down on them, and they created the full 2-part Hunger Sight jam with the big incendiary shreddy peak, and then kind of the funky breakdown afterwards, which quickly went into Clav tweet territory.
Nice.
And turned into some really just Trevor-led Year of Tea type stuff that people were moving, people were jumping up and down and like bobbing and swaying, and the crowd was really going, and I think that they turned a few heads during this point of people who maybe didn't even realize they were seeing a jam band. Sup, Haps? Yeah. Like people that didn't even necessarily know Goose was a jam band who were there were suddenly like, oh, okay, like so these guys jam. This is cool though.
Right. I'm based on that description. I'm really looking forward to hearing this Hunger Sight when we do get Borfs.
It was
Josh.
No, it was a great version. I mean, it definitely felt like I'm sure it was the longest jam that they did of the 75-minute set that they had. I don't know how many minutes it was, but I just love, I think, especially ever since hearing that like first version they did with Trey, when that like Rick solo,
that first note of the
just
solo.
Like it's just like such a rush of energy for a song, and it's just so much fun every time. And I feel like he just gets better and better every time they play it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then after Hunger Site, second time they've done this, Goose returns with the two of them adding vocals on Slow Ready. What did the crowd think of this one? Josh, take us through this.
I think it was really well received. I think Lucius. So we went to Newport last year, and Lucius and Goose were both at that. And I know they both sat in with like multiple sets, throughout the weekend. And Lucius was kind of the same way at Railbird. I mean, it really speaks to them. Like they must just really be so well liked by their fellow musicians, because I feel like they're always collaborating with people at these festivals. And they popped up with Marcus Mumford, and they popped up with a couple other people at least. But
Jenny Lewis and Cheryl Crow.
Okay, yeah, and I think there was probably even more, but it was fun. I mean, when they first walked out, I kind of assumed it was probably going to be Slow Ready, which I had never heard live. This was my fourth show. My brother was very jealous that I got a Slow Ready. He's definitely hoping for that one at SPAC. But yeah, it was great. I think they add to the song. It's kind of a unique version. I think it's always fun, just to hear something a little bit more unique. And that's, I think, what you can see at festivals that you might not see elsewhere.
Love it. Jeff, anything to add on the Slow Ready?
I just thought it was a really nice treat. I was kind of bummed when I saw that Lucius and Goose were on different days of the festival, because I thought it would be a perfect opportunity for them to collaborate again. I really, really liked the Slow Ready and In Your Eyes that they did
at the Greek,
LA last fall. Yeah, it was at the Greek in LA last fall. And I was like, damn, they're there on different days. Too bad. And for some reason, I thought Lucius had a gig at a different festival yesterday, so I didn't expect him to show up. And when they walked out on stage, it was a real treat, and figured it would be Slow Ready. And I mean, it was really good. I don't know if it was better or worse or different.
That's not, yeah. You just have a good time. You don't need to compare those two, something like that.
Yeah, but I mean, they're both great. Like it's taking an amazing song and adding a little something to it.
Yeah.
And then the big arpeggiator breakdown jam at the end of it. It's just really cool to see them adding those oohs
vocals
and to it. It adds a whole different dynamic to it and makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, and getting to see that live is super cool too.
It was, and it was also, I don't think we've called this out yet, but Goose had the horribly shitty task of having to play to the sun in their eyes.
Oh.
So, yeah, the sun was setting over the main stage right across from them as they were playing, and it was kind of probably like right at like a 35-degree angle up in the air or so, but it was still like 85, 87 degrees out, and just sun like just blasting in their faces as they're playing.
Oh man,
they were baking hard, and none of them had hats on, so they couldn't open their eyes and look out into the crowd properly, but then it all of a sudden just kind of worked. With Lucius was out there, and they were having this mellow moment, playing just kind of like a groovy, fun, slow, mellow song, and suddenly nobody seemed like hot anymore. They were just vibing. It was.
I love it. And then the set closes with Arcadia. Nice exclamation point. I think this song has been due for a few shows now. So great to see that make an appearance. Ending off this mini festival weekend on a high note. But anything to add about this Arcadia? It seemed, based on the timing, that it was pretty short.
They had less than 10 minutes on it. I don't know if it was 8, 9.
Yeah.
But it's a good festival banger song. It doesn't get used often in that capacity anymore, but when they do, I mean, it's great for that spot. And my big call out for this Arcadia is Rick's new guitar really, really shined during the ending peak on it.
Yeah.
Don't know if he's played Arc yet with this new guitar.
Yeah. They did it in San Diego.
In San Diego, they did. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, just seeing this guitar live on a big booming PA system ripping through the end of Arcadia. I just remember standing there, just like, I mean, it was just like tearing shreds through my fibers of being, and I was just blown away by like how cutting and insane it was. And I remember standing there thinking like, all right, this is what the luthier had in mind when he built this guitar. Like he had listened to this song and this part of the song and thought, like, I need to build a guitar that can just nail this. And
he did.
And
it sounds so good. Josh, do you have anything to say about this Arcadia before we wrap up?
Yeah, it was definitely a song I was hoping to hear. Like I a lot of times when I'm going to a show, I'll try not to peek at the set list from previously, but I inevitably do when I end up on Twitter. And I was glad to see that they hadn't played it. And to me, like one of my favorite Goose performances still to this day is that, that Peach Fest and that Arcadia there. And so I think having that like 9-minute Arcadia is just like a perfect cap to like the festival set. And I think it's like a fairly well-known song of theirs too. I think when I first heard Goose was on some Spotify, jam band type playlist. And I think that's the song that I first heard. I think it's funny to listen back to the studio version now because it feels like a totally different band. It reminds me of in my younger days when I like was in high school and college, really liking OAR, and you go back and listen to like the Wanderer album and their version of like Crazy Game of Poker on there is like, it sounds like a totally different band. And that's kind of how I feel about the, Arcadia studio version, but to hear like the 8 to 10 minute like live version and just to close the set with that was just awesome. I was glad they played it. It's like, to me, it's like a song I could probably hear at every show and enjoy it. So
you and me both. Well, that brings us to the end of this set. Thank you, Jeff and Josh, both of you, for being on today and sharing your experience at Railbird. It has been an absolute pleasure. And everybody watching, I hope you all enjoyed this, getting a look at what we're going to be hearing when these boards do drop, hopefully in the next couple of days. We're going to be back in a couple of weeks once Summer Tour kicks off for real. Are they playing a show on June 21st or are they not? Who knows? It has not been announced. It is like 2.5 weeks away. So I don't know. Maybe they're playing like a show in like a 200 capacity bar and, they're going to announce it 2 days before. But there is a mysterious June 21st date on the schedule. We don't know. So we may have a day after show on June 22nd. We may not. If not, we'll see you to talk about Louisville. But regardless, we will be back in a couple of weeks. So thank you, everybody, so much for tuning into this episode of Day After Show. See you next time. Have a phenomenal day.